Hey, this is Tommy. So I recently finished up my online neurobiology class. It was kind of self-paced and it was over the summer. Most of you guys know probably because you are peer reviewing this video. This is my final project for the class. But for all the other people who are watching this on YouTube, this is kind of the background for this video. So prior to taking this neurobiology class, I was actually able to take biology and also psychology classes at my university. And this online class actually helped me to kind of put together the two disciplines I learned in my previous classes, and it was a nice experience overall. Okay, so jumping into the final project. The final project is analyzing neurobiology in my everyday life. My everyday life is actually pretty interesting because recently I've been able to shadow a sleep doctor, and shadowing a sleep doctor obviously opens up my eyes to all the facets of science in the field of medicine, so not only neurobiology, but since I am shadowing this doctor, this is kind of neurobiology in my everyday life for my doctor, but cut me some slack here because I'm actually shadowing him, so it is kind of my neurobiology in everyday life. So let's first start off with the idea of sleep. So in this class we learned about sleep pressure and how that kind of builds up over the day once we wake up, and once we go to sleep we kind of release all that pressure. Or we can also call this sleep debt, where we pay off the sleep debt that we accumulate over the day by sleeping at night. So some of the patients that my doctor that I'm shadowing with actually sees, they have trouble sleeping because perhaps of their circadian rhythm, and that is another key idea or concept that we learned. So circadian rhythm actually keeps us awake. So some of the patients that come in have worked night shifts in the past, and so their circadian rhythm might not be allowing them to kind of sleep at their desired time now, but we learned this idea of sleep pressure and circadian rhythm kind of playing a role in sleep. Another aspect of sleep is the quality of sleep, and in the class we learned about slow wave sleep and also REM sleep, and in specifically like where it is in neurobiology, it's in the brain and it's the neocortex being either offline or online. So the neocortex would be online during REM sleep and then offline during slow wave sleep. So some applications of seeing slow wave sleep and REM sleep is with the doctor I'm shadowing with. He looks at sleep data. So patients go in for a sleep study where they're hooked up with a whole bunch of machines and they sleep through the night, and then data is collected. And with the data, you can see slow wave sleep and REM sleep, and depending on this, the doctor I'm shadowing with then kind of gives a diagnosis on possible sleep disorders or sleep apnea. So given the data, the doctor I'm shadowing with, he can maybe diagnose the patient with a sleeping disorder or sleep apnea depending on the slow wave sleep and REM sleep, but obviously there's other data collected. But an example of slow wave sleep and REM sleep is that data is collected during the sleep study. In this class we also learned about breathing, and we learned that the motor neurons innervating the diaphragm are located in the cervical spinal cord C3 and C5, and also the central pattern generators are in the medulla. So we detect CO2 and then we start breathing. This idea of detecting CO2 in order to breathe is actually very prevalent because where I'm shadowing, sleep medicine is actually housed under pulmonology. And this is perhaps because a lot of patients in sleep medicine, they're coming in because of sleep apnea. So in sleep apnea, their passageway is closed, and that's obstructive sleep apnea. But there's also a part where they can't breathe on their own, so they're assisted with BiPAP, this bilevel positive air pressure. And there's a whole bunch of cool connections with detecting CO2, the central pattern generators, but I'm not going to delve too much into it because this video is supposed to be only 3 to 5 minutes long. I'm trying to keep it really short, and I'm also going to dive into a very cool and interesting topic, and that is the abstract functions. So the last section of the neurobiology class that I took covered abstract functions, and there was a really good quote in one of the later videos, and that is, "Facts of disease does not translate to experiences of people." This was talking about the neocortex and how everyone's neocortex is different, unique. The experiences that we get from perhaps obtaining a disease is different for different individuals. I wanted to make this really cool connection to not just sleep medicine, but kind of medicine as a broad field. The doctor I'm shadowing with constantly kind of reminds me that he's not treating the numbers. So he's looking at a sleep study and he's looking at how long they slept or whatever. The numbers, they're not as important as the symptoms that his patients are coming in with. So even if the patient is diagnosed with some mild sleep apnea, but they're not affecting the quality of life, perhaps the doctor I'm shadowing with doesn't even treat them because the quality of life is what matters to them, right? So if they don't have a good reason to start a CPAP, for example, and it would be perhaps even worse to start on CPAP because they have to get used to all the machinery and stuff, perhaps they won't even be treated for sleep apnea. I believe that the idea of how different people interpret the same experience, possibly in different ways, because of their unique neocortexes, speaks volumes to personalized medicine. The approach that not everyone is the same and that a certain disease can affect different people in different ways.